I was trying for like the last 15 minutes, and
Good.
so now we're in. So that's all that matters.
Well, yeah, we were. I mean, I literally just jumped on 90 seconds ago. So there's that. I
What
mean, there's
much
that
of
part.
life is waiting to get on a virtual call?
Not for this guy. This guy's. Do you even wait for the coals to start, or is it just forever burning?
Well, the coals are already on. I just had wood and it keeps on going. Like I've been here since like 3 this morning. I have a catering downstairs for like 300. So I was like, I got to get away for a little bit, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome. I'm glad this is actually relaxing. But do the pits ever get cold? Like, do they?
Mondays, yeah, because there's one day that they're not running, which is Monday. So after Sunday lunch is all we're doing on there is like all the ribs and the turkeys and stuff like that. So once we're done, it's like 2ish, and then
Mm-hmm.
they're really small. Then Monday we don't no one's well we're here on Monday, but the pits aren't running on Monday. And then
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, like today, they've been up at 3 and they go all the way to Sunday.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating, but we're here to talk about parenting.
That's true. That's true. Well, this is what I do to Ernest. I get him to talk about his love of barbecue. But what's crazy is I learned more recently the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I don't even know anything about your son. So, because
Yeah.
you have a son and daughter, right? So
Yeah,
there's all that.
I have a son and a daughter. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we're going to
Okay.
do a proper intro. So let's
Okay.
not waste. I don't want
Yeah,
to waste
so
your gold.
yeah, I got
I
a
don't
son
want to
and
waste
daughter.
your.
Son and daughter. Son just I love him to death, but he just couldn't get it in the restaurant industry. So,
Mm-hmm.
but he does get to eat. He eats all the time, but
We have a
we
lot in
moved him.
common.
Yeah, so he I think he just overthinks it. He's been trying to do this thing since he was a little kid, but he just didn't get it. And his sister got it from a young age and ran with it. So it is what it is. But yeah,
Well, that's a great tee up. We're going to have to unpack all that over the hour. But
yeah, for
Ollie,
sure.
do us a favor,
Mm-hmm.
introduce our guest, introduce today's guest.
Here we go. Today's guest is a Texas barbecue powerhouse whose rise from backyard smoker to national acclaim has inspired a new generation of pitmasters. A James Beard nominated chef, TV champion, and competition legend, Ernest Cervantes has spent years turning his Tejano roots and deep love of food into some of the most celebrated barbecue in the country. Over his award-studded career, he's racked up grand champion titles across Texas, cooked at festivals around the world, and helped shape what modern barbecue looks like today. Millions first met Ernest when he won Food Network's Chopped Grilled Masters, but today crowds line up in Seguin, Texas for his acclaimed restaurant Burnt Bean Company, named Texas Monthly's #1 barbecue joint and widely recognized as the most influential barbecue spot in the state. I really upped it a bit. He said one of, I just went for it. A self-taught chef and proud Uvalde native, Ernest blends competition-level mastery with the flavors he grew up on, crafting dishes that honor the Tejano spirit and the warm, soulful cooking of his family. When he's not at the pit, Ernest is a proud father to his 2 kids, Ernest and Sabrina. Please welcome Ernest Cervantes to World's Greatest Dad. Yeah.
That was me doing the crowd. We'll put it in post. We'll have some fun. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. I'm excited. Like I was really excited about this little podcast because it's something other than barbecue, but at the same time, we'll probably talk about barbecue. And
Yeah.
when Ollie asked me to do it, I was gun ho from the beginning. So I'm really pumped, really excited, and I'm
Well,
ready to answer questions.
here's a little secret about this show. Is it's about being a dad, but really it's just a way for us to talk to all the cool, interesting people we've, collected in our travels over the last, what are you, 47? What do you, I always forget.
Me?
I don't know. Me,
Yeah,
I'm 40. Jesus, on the whole thing.
All right, let's
I'm
hold this
48
up.
years old.
All right, DOB, May 9th, 1985, 40 years old. You guys want my social security number? Oh, no, wait, I shouldn't do that.
Neil's young. No, don't do that. But yeah, you meet people over the years. Ernest has met people over the years. And you're in New York City. You just, it's probably evened out. You probably caught up and surpassed us, just being in a place like
Yeah, I
that.
meet people. Ernest, how old are you?
I'm 47.
Oh my God, Ollie, aren't you 47?
I'm the oldest person here. No, I'm 48. Wait, I think. It's
Oh,
weird. You really do lose track. I was
yeah.
born in 77.
I always thought I was 45 until like 2 days ago. My wife's like, "No, you're 47, and you're gonna be 48 in September
Yeah.
of next year." So I was like,
So you just had a birthday like 2 months ago. You didn't remember celebrating? Did you? What?
"Well, once you hit 40, all of them are like." The numbers don't count anymore. It's more about being grateful for being alive and being
Yeah.
grateful for the people that remember you. You know what I mean? I'm old in aspects, but I'm still young at heart, as they always say. I still think I can hang with the 20-year-olds until my body says no. Mentally I'm there, in the 20s, but physically, once in a while I get a check engine light that comes on once in a while. So, I gotta just make sure I got everything in tuned now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a 47-year-old vehicle. Let me like. Do you even think there's any resale value there, or? I mean,
Well, I don't even consider. I consider. I'm a chef, so chefs you got to consider them like an 18-wheeler. You know what I mean? There's a lot
mm,
of miles in us compared to like a normal person. A normal person that's 47 years old. It's Cadillac. Maybe he's got 79,000 miles, but been very well maintenance.
Yeah.
I'm a Peterbilt 18-wheeler. With probably a million plus miles. And
Yeah.
that's with because the way we live. We have long hours. We put a lot of stress and stuff like that. We're hammered down. And we're fueled by back in the day we were fueled by Red Bulls and other stuff, and now it's more like wild mushroom coffee and more kind of organic and holistic stuff. Yeah, I consider myself like an old Peterbilt truck. It takes a little bit to get me warmed up, but when we get trucking,
Yeah.
we get trucking.
Yeah, I love that. You're an 18-wheeler. Yeah, that's a different thing. I wonder what kind of car I am.
you're making me like. This is a whole other thing. I'm like, we should ask every dad that comes on here now. What car are you? What car?
But from the
Ollie,
perspective of your body, wear and tear.
right, Ollie, I see you as an Audi. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
A nice Audi.
I feel like I'm exactly what I drive, an old Kia that the mechanic's like, look, technically there's nothing wrong with it, but, it's just not a flashy thing. But you know what? I'm not flashy, but I'm reliable. And I think
I
that's
like that.
actually, yeah, I mean, it's
I like
God's,
that.
and I have to worry about, you know what? You can park me anywhere. I'm not picky. You know what I mean? I do. One of the things I love about my car is that I will never think twice about pulling up to a taco truck in the hood. That's a great, I think that's a freedom.
Yeah, that
That's
is
a total
freedom.
freedom. That's kind of my view. What are you a Metro card? Like
I'm
with the
just
1 month Metro card, you can just ride the
I'm,
train
I'm
all day.
fascinated by this narrative that not having wealth is freedom. So let's keep it going. No, it's interesting. I mean, we have a Subaru because my wife said when we had kids, we got to get a car, which, made sense, even though we're in the city because we go places, otherwise we'd be stuck on this island. And so I obviously just looked for what's the safest car, and Subaru kind of checked the box. Was not my first. I thought we were going down the like because there's the like your first car you had, and I think that actually says a lot more about you than the car you currently have. Because anybody can
Yeah,
get a car as an adult, you know.
yeah,
You finance it, you got a partner, you get it, whatever. You can make your own
yeah,
decision. The car that is handed to you,
yeah,
either that you worked for or that your parents, it says a lot about you. I bet you if you told me people's first car, I could like probably guess their like median income or like a lot of attributes about them. So anyway, I'll tell you, Ernest, my first car at 17 years old was my grandfather's used Chrysler Eagle. I want to say it was like a 1997 or 8, and this was in 2002. Do with that what you will. Make assumptions or don't. What was your first
yeah.
car, Ollie?
So I would have gotten this in 1993. It was technically my mom's car. I just kind of took it at will. But I had a 1986 Honda Accord DX that the only thing automatic was a transmission. It had the radio was like you pressed the button and the orange line would pop one way or the other, and there were times where it would actually overheat, and my friend was like, and this was in the summer in St. Louis, we would crank the heat and run the heat through like the vents, and it would actually cool the temperature down. Other than that, it was a very solid, great car. Reliable. You could take it to any taco truck and not think twice. But if anything, yeah, I'd make the taco truck owner nervous.
Yeah, I got it in 1994. It was my aunt's 1985 Ford Sable, faded out. It had no air conditioner. It had no paint on it anymore. I think she like had her cat food in it. It was one of those type of things. Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty. Yeah, it got overheated, but it was freedom. So
Yeah.
I had it, and we knew my dad would not care where I take it because he knew it would overheat after about 45 minutes. So I couldn't get very far. So I would really have to like pay attention to where I was going.
Yeah.
So yeah, so 40 like an 85 Ford Sable.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything, no air conditioner, no I guess radio. So the first thing I bought, I used to work for my uncle as a custodian. So the first thing I did was I bought like a JVC at Walmart type of
Yeah.
cassette player, and then
Yeah.
that was cool for like a year, and then
Yeah.
the whole CDs came out. So when they went cruising with my friends, I had one friend that would hold the CD player so it wouldn't skip while have to adapt it to put in your cassette player, and we go
Amen.
cruising, and we thought we were
Yes.
so cool. We thought we were
Yes.
so cool.
Can I
Oh
tell you
my
something?
God. Yeah.
You were cool. All right?
Yeah,
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 you
Yeah.
were cool.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
guys are making my little Chrysler Eagle sound like a real luxury vehicle, you know?
I wouldn't go that far either.
All
I mean,
right.
it's a Chrysler E. I mean, that
Yeah.
is something that really, that's a model that doesn't, well, neither does a Sable.
It was a real grandpa car, and it was my grandpa's car.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean the middle. And by the middle, I mean really it's all relative. What is time? It is a flat circle. You've got a 26-year-old and a
20-year-old. Yeah,
So Ernest Jr., does he go by Junior?
he's a third.
Ernest the third.
Oh,
Oh, you're
Yeah,
the
I'm junior.
all
you're
right. So
I'm a
Ernest
junior.
the
junior. Yeah.
third. Let's actually go 27 years back, or let's actually go 26 years and 10 months back. All right. You just found out, oh my God, I'm having a kid. What is happening? What is going through your mind? Where are you in your life? Just walk us through, we'll take a walk down memory lane, the stress, the joy.
Oh yeah, it was. First, it was a surprise. I was in college, so I was like a freshman. I was young. I was 19.
Mm.
So that was the shocker. But I was kind of nervous, and I didn't know what to do. It was one of those type of things. But I remember my parents had me at that age, and so I could just relate to them, and I had my son, and it was just different. My parents like, you're not quitting school. You're gonna finish, and we'll help you. And her family supported my son too, and lived a really great upbringing and everything. But it was different. I see my daughter and my son at that age, and I'm like, I was already a dad at that time. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was a different thing. And I just found out during Thanksgiving I'm going to be a grandpa. So
What?
yeah,
Congratulations. Amazing.
I'm pretty excited. My son's like, "Hey, happy Thanksgiving, and by the way, you're going to be a grandpa." And then I look at him and I'm thinking, you're gonna be 27 when you have your kid. You're gonna be young, and I'm thinking to myself, I had Sabrina at 25, so 26. So that was right around the same age. So, he's more established. He's got a great career. He's been with her for about 5 years. So it was one of
Mm.
these things that it was a different situation than I was.
Hmm.
And but yeah, so I'm excited. I get to be a grandpa, and so yeah, and my son, he was like my mini me. If you see him, but just a big guy. He's 6'4". He's a biggin, but yeah, he was my mini me growing up. My fond memories is I bet the day I used to work at Wendy's, and I would take a Frosty and we'd eat it together. So those are some at the park or whatever, and it was good memories. And now I'm thinking, okay, what am I gonna do as a grandpa? I remember being a father at 19. You're like, what are you gonna do? You know, you don't really have a really good career. You're just starting off, and it makes you get a really tough skin at a young age, and you have to grow up a little bit faster. But I'm a firm believer of everything happens for a reason, and I'm blessed to have my son, and he's a vital part of my life and his too. And I'm gonna be a grandpa, so that's pretty cool.
Very
How
cool.
did you navigate, like, my God, I mean, I remember when I started college and it was a miracle I got through. You're a dad, like, and obviously you had the support of your parents, which is huge, but still, you're in college and, I'm assuming most of your friends were not dads.
Right.
How did you negotiate that and still have a college experience? And yeah, what was all that like?
It was actually cool because I would take my son to my fraternity stuff, you know what I mean? And the guys would come over to the apartment, and the guys are like, actually, we talked. I had, so once a year, all my alumni brothers that I was with, they come to the Burnt Bean, and we sit down and talk about the old days. These guys are in their 50s now, most of them. And they were, where I was telling them I'm going to be a grandpa, and they're like, dude, I remember when we used to hang out with your little boy in the apartment, and we'd bring him stuff, and he'd hang out with us. And, it was just crazy because you're still trying to live a college life at the same time. And I had really good friends, and it made it a little bit easier. They accepted me still, and much less in a fraternity. So yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, not only did you, it'd be one thing to be like, oh, you're gonna stay in school, and you did, but you also joined a fraternity. I mean,
Yeah.
that's burning the candle at both ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment, but there was a lot of times where I just couldn't go to certain things, and there's the responsibilities you have. But yeah, I try to have about the biggest um, college experience I could at the time. Much less with my son, but yeah, and then I went into the workforce, and just a regular old dad, and then 7 8 year old now getting to football and all that stuff. So, I didn't party as much anymore. I had to grow up a little bit faster, but I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you then went into the chef world, which is notorious for long hours. We've certainly talked to folks in the past who've been like, once they have kids, they're like, yeah, they take different jobs that, don't give you those late hours. How did that work? You graduate college and you've got a 4-year-old basically. I mean, this is
Yeah,
wild.
I tried the real workforce, I guess you could say. I did the whole suit and tie thing, and I really was good at it. I worked for Norwood Financial, which was kind of like a sister of Wells Fargo. I was a credit manager, and we'd give like home equity loans and house loans and car loans. And, I dealt with people's credit, and we're a bank, and I was miserable. I had a 9 to 5, came home and, did the thing off on weekends, but I hated it. I really hated that. I love to be in the kitchens. That's where my true calling was. And so I quit the real world and went back and started to become a chef. And I worked my way up. I didn't go to culinary school or anything like that. So I really wanted it back in the day. And of course, you start off in the dish room, and any opportunity for them to, if there was a open shift that someone called in, I would take it. And then the chefs would see that, I was really serious about it. And my drive was for my son at the time. You know what I mean? I wanted him to have a better life, and I wanted us to have a better life. And that was it. And then as years went on, um, that's how it went. I wanted to be a chef. That was the bottom line, and I had goals and aspirations and everything, but I just had to do it the longer road, as you would say.
So your son was 6 when your daughter was born, is that right?
6 or 7, I think. Yeah, something around there.
And what was the decision like to have another kid now that were you like, all right, I can handle this, or was it also a surprise?
No, no. I guess the difference was is that I had my son with a different woman, so it was different. And then I met my wife, and she was grounded. She had a really good job. She was a teacher, and we dated for 3 years, and she accepted that I had a son. So that was cool. That's the biggest challenge, was to have someone that would accept your child, all circumstances. So I was very blessed in that part. And yeah, and we got married, and but she's organized. She's like, okay, by this day, we're going to have a child. We're going to be doing this and this. So we waited a year or two and then had Sabrina. It was planned. And then that was it. So, raising kids that are 6 to 7 years apart, it's real easy because you literally raise them like single children, I guess you could say, like the only child, because there's no competition. There's no, hey, like my sister and I were literally like 10 months apart. Like my parents are like, so, competing with your sister that's like a year off from you compared to 6 and 7, they really didn't have that intimidation. He was more like the big brother. And she saw it that way, and still today, they both live in San Antonio, and he still takes care of her like a big brother, and she's there too. So it was a lot easier, I guess.
What was it like navigating, I mean, I don't even think this term existed 26 years ago, co-parenting, especially you're in college, you're not married, you're a young dad. I mean, was that, how did you find your footing, with this person who you didn't necessarily envision you'd be tethered to for the rest of your life, and now here you are both responsible for this human. Like, walk us through that.
It was a challenge, especially when you didn't get along. So it was one of those type of things. I think not until we were in our this when Ernest was like 8 or 9 years old. When I got married, I think what really toned it down was when I got married. She realized, hey, it's not about us; it's about my son, our son, and and we took it from there. And co-parenting, that's how it has to be, because at the end, it's not about you and them; it's about raising this child on two different. She moved on with her life, and I moved on with ours, and our son had to be welcomed in both. And he fit like a shoe. We co-parent him. He knew he was a big brother to his sister and a big brother to his two other little brothers from the other side. And still today, he's like the big bear. He was raised like that. So he always, he was always loved and he was always cared for and spoiled like a rotten, a kid. But yeah, it was really cool. And we just kept it, civil.
You mentioned that when you did meet your current wife, she's a teacher. Seems like she was kind of more like goal focused, jeweler, if you will. How
Still
would you
is.
describe the type of dad? Obviously, we all have roles to fill in families. And I want to say maybe I've been accused of being the fun dad or whatever, but how would you, if you had to step back, just jump out of your own skin and describe Ernest Cervantes, the dad, how would you describe your dad's style?
Well, I was, and I still today, I was raised, I got to go back and I guess the person that you look up to who gave you the pretty much all the notes to become a father, because when you become a father for the first time, twice as I call it, because one I was too young and the second time was still new to me. You learn from your dad. Your dad, you kind of remember the way he raised you and the way, how he raised you and all that. And in my household, I was a strict but fair dad, and that's how it was. And the kids knew it. It was everything was respect. There was no what dad said went, what mom said went. Mom was the nurturer, and dad it was like good cop, bad cop type of thing. But it was one of those that what did dad say, and whatever she said, we have to agree on. Because they get to the time where the kids kind of like, well, double ask, I guess you could say, to see what they can get from this. But yeah, it was really I was a strict but fair dad. I kind of ran it like my kitchens. I know this kind of sounds cheesy, but that's the only thing I can relate it to. Everything was structured. Everything was, you had responsibilities, you had chores. There's no leeway. Education was everything. I had a rule in the house. If you made straight A's, the answer would be yes. You made A's and B's, the answer would be like, we will see. If you made C's, we'll see, or maybe, and then D's and F's, no. So if you made straight A's, both of my children realized if they made straight A's, their life was really good, and that's how it was. It was very simple. Hey, Dad, can I have this? And I would say yes, and that was the reward. And they would do chores, and when you instill those kind of values at a young age of being responsible, held accountable, not only with your education, but as well as simple things like picking up your room, uh, washing dishes, doing laundry. Everybody worked as a team, and we created a culture with my wife and I with our children. There was no, there was nothing else they knew. I guess when you have children, if this is how they were raised, and that's it, they wouldn't question, they wouldn't talk back because it's, I never actually, that was the coolest part. Never did I ever spank my children or use corporal punishment or anything like that. There was no timeouts. There was no nothing like that because my children knew, from they were little, it's like that was right or wrong. I created a conscience around the house that, hey, you knew better. You knew when you go outside, not only are you representing yourself, but you're representing your mom and your dad as well. So I never had to get called from the principal or get called from anything like that. I always heard, your children are good. Your children are, smart. From honor society to everything else, they were instilled leaders, and I think that has a lot to do with you setting the foundation as well as you set the example every day. And as a parent, and mind you, being a parent and still trying to figure out what you're going to do. We were lower middle income family. We weren't rich, my wife and I, but we were creating a foundation to what was further onto what becomes a burnt bean. So my children didn't know any better, just like I was born kind of poor. We had everything that we needed, not what we wanted. So it was one of those things, and my kids did the same thing. So my kids knew how to work. My kids knew how to do chores. Um, it wasn't one of those questionable things like, hey, if you do this, I will pay you with this or reward them for things that was already instilled into the house. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I mean I, going back to what I was saying earlier, so my flash of the Bernie Sanders, but it's like you can think you have all the things you want, but it's never enough because the world has a billion more things trumps anything you could just actually, I think, collect. I mean, it's just the kind of the nature of it, of desire. But I did want to jump into something I thought it was fascinating, and I think it's fair to say you have grown kids, right? Neil and I were still in the trenches, although my son is fast on his way. He is now 4 years to being a legal adult, which is frightening. I have no idea how that's possible. But one of the things that I think Neil and I kind of live with as parents now is a common idea that, disciplining your children physically is kind of not really kosher, if you will. I mean, everyone to each their own to a degree, right? But you brought up how you didn't do it. I think it's fair to say I know, frankly, the way I was brought up, I wasn't really physically disciplined, but I saw some shit. And I say that as someone who grew up with immigrants for parents and just cultural norms that are frankly different, certainly different than how I am as a dad. So I just wanted to touch base on it because it's a thing that we kind of know is maybe not talked about or generally considered on its way out, but how much in stark contrast was it in your situation parenting that you could say, yeah, we did not discipline our kids using, you physically disciplining? Yeah.
Well, growing up, I had, strong traditional Roman Catholic Hispanic parents, and discipline was there. And the belt was there, and your mom's pinching at church was there. But as parents, and you grew up, if the fear factor of your father that 6'3" would waylay into your butt, and just the thought kept me on the right road. You understand what I'm saying? My dad didn't have to do anything. He just had to look at me. So that's the same thing I did with my kids because and this is just me being a father, and this is the way I raise my kids. What do you accomplish by whipping the shit out of your kids? Other than really like having them scared of you or not respecting you? Because at the end of the day, what ends up happening is, and I can see this, if you instill that fear at a young age with your children and you fear or you whip them, and I don't believe that accomplishes anything, what happens in later in their time is when they really need you at 16, 14, 15, even at 20, they will be too afraid to ask for help or ask for advice because I would rather have my kids saying, "Oh my God, my dad," I don't want them to say, "Oh my God, I can't talk to my dad about this," or "Oh my God, my dad's going to kill me," compared to, "Oh my God, I need my dad right now and I need him to be here for me."
And like, how was that? Did your parents, like, did they see this
Wait,
different?
hang on. It says your recording
Can
stopped.
you hear me now?
Yeah, but the
It was
record.
it was it was my phone was ringing.
Okay, hold on.
That's
So
Can you
we're
hear me
gonna.
now?
Yeah. Wait. Yeah, but you're not recording anymore.
Does it say recording on? Yeah. He's back, Neil. That's good. He keeps an eye on everything.
Mhm.
Did that? I mean, did your parents remark on that parenting style?
Yeah, and then yes, and you got to realize that every generation as a parent, and this is again how I analyze being a parent. We're taking everything what we were raised with by what our parents did to us, and we're kind of like buffing it out to the way we it's like, okay, I like this what that my parents did, but I didn't like what my parents did. So you got to remember that my parents were the baby boomers of the World War II generation, and everything was about strictness, and they would whip their kids and all that stuff, and even corporal punishment. And I think Ali, I don't know where you were raised, but we were the last generation of corporal punishment in this education system. They gave licks back in the day. They gave all that stuff if you weren't right. So that was because of the generations before. But yeah, and I did. When I got in trouble, like when I had my son, I was afraid to ask my parents for help. I was still afraid to ask my parents for advice. Even when I was getting married with my dad, I just couldn't relate to him because I was afraid. I didn't have that relationship that I can talk to my dad about anything. And that's the one thing that I wanted to do with my children is still instill the point of where they respect me as an authoritative disciplinary, but yet they can still come to me and talk. I don't want to be the friend because I think if you become a friend to your children will take advantage of that. And then you get to the point you're like, well, shit, what do I do? And the disrespect comes in. My children always could come to me when needed, and they still do. But yet at the same time, they respect me and especially my wife as their parents. They never disrespected us. We never had, kids disrespecting and saying, I hate you, mom and dad, because they were there. They were there and we were there for them. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, no. I mean, it's just I think look, it's something that I know I kind of dangle with, but I'm not worried about it as much of being like essentially too soft of my being too much of a friend because for some reason like my kid knows like he feels it. It's funny is they feel the pain, the emotional pain, anger, disappointment. Like they're not. I mean, at least my son's not immune to it, despite me not being some sort of drill sergeant, if you. But I kind of want to know, Neil, do you wade in the waters of being the too friendly, the friendly dad to the kid? I don't know. You're just such a
Yeah, I
friendly
think it's
guy
a
to me.
dance, right? I mean, Ernest, I don't know if this was a thing, yeah, I'm sure it wasn't, but are you familiar with the phrase gentle parenting? Have you heard about that?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so that's all the rage, which essentially it's it's just like being kind to your kids and trying not to raise your voice and stuff. It's hard, right? Because and we've had dads come on here too where they're like, "Yeah, I try not to raise my voice." And then when I'm asking them 5 or 6 times, I scream, right? Because we are human beings and we get frustrated. And then there's been this whole backlash to the gentle parenting movement, which is there's FAFO parenting, fuck around, find out parenting, which is like kind of insane because it's like there was a whole article in the Wall Street Journal about it, like these parents who were just like, I'll throw you in the river for splashing me. And you're like, that seems like a not equivalent punishment. But so I think the truth is, it's like somewhere in the middle, and we're evolving and trying to be, yeah, I'm too easy. I'm too easygoing. And, so sometimes what I do is, I'll give you an example from this morning, because I'll be like, I'm going to set a boundary and I'm going to be like real disciplinarian. And my daughter has this labubu. It's not a real labubu, it's a lafufu. Do you know about labubus, Ernest?
No, no.
Labubus are these kind of terrifying looking little stuffed animals. They're like Beanie Babies or Furbies or Tickle Me Up. Like they're trendy. I'm sure, who knows if they're going to exist in 5 years. But like, so my daughter got one, a fake one, her little labubu, and she's wearing it around her. On her little jeans. She's got like like she's a janitor with keys, but she goes, well, and I'm not gonna mention this kid. She goes, well, so and so brought it to school, and I go, yeah, but I think it's a distraction, and I don't think it's a good idea. And then my wife says to me, what are you doing? Just let her bring it to school. Why are you having this fight? And I'm like, I thought I thought this was good. I was saying hey. And so I think sometimes I struggle with like what is an important boundary to make, and I don't know. I'm figuring it out. But my kids are 7 and 5, so yeah.
Those are the perfect ages. And when my children are at that age, that was the era of, how would I put it? Uh, Scenarios. So if that was my scenario, uh, I would have let her go with that. And then if something happened, like it got stolen, or someone took it away, or someone got it dirty, and she comes home crying, that's where you come and say, well, didn't I tell you it's not a great idea? Yeah. I said, so what could you have done better? Well, I couldn't have taken it to school. I said, and if you didn't take it to school, what happened? I would have still had it. I'm like, yeah. So now you don't have it, right? Right. So next time I'm not taking it, Dad. So it gave her a conscience. You kind of have to play both devil's advocate and yet consoling dad. So you give them these scenarios. So when they're growing, it builds up their conscience without you being a real mean dad. So they already know what the consequences are going to be. Son, are you going to take your shoes? Yes, Dad. Are you sure about that? Because I'm not too crazy about that. Dad, trust me. Okay, they come back, Dad, and he knows he wasn't going to get a new pair. What happened? Well, I shouldn't have taken him, Dad. You were absolutely right. So it doesn't make you look like a bad father. It makes you look like a father that's giving them a conscience to know what the situation is going to happen. And they knew if it happens, I'm not going to buy you new shoes. I'm not going to make it, even though it kills me inside. Because if you don't give that type of conscience without them knowing that they're getting like lessons of life, then they're just going to be like, oh, I'm going to take it anyways because Dad's going to still buy me another one. And you don't do that, and then you just slowly realize, hey, and then you give them a conscience. I'm like, you're not going to take that? No, Dad, because where I'm going, they're probably going to do something to it. Same thing. No, Dad, I'm not going to take my headphones when the iPods came in because I know that's going to happen, or they'll steal it from my locker. So you give them their own conscience that makes them have decisions, and they know the consequences. And what happens at that young age is when they get to become teenagers, they won't push the envelope. And then guess what? When they're in college, you give them that conscience. Should I drive home after drinking? Should I go to this guy's house after or am I the only girl there? I should be careful. Or my son's like, hey, these guys were doing bad things. I'm going to back off. I've had to the point where you get that conscience in them that they know it's not right and they feel uncomfortable. I always said, son, daughter, if you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to be the lame kid, make an excuse, make me sound like an asshole, and say, my dad needs me home now. I don't know what happened to my dad. It happened many times with my son. I said, son, if you don't feel comfortable at the sleepover or at a friend's party, or even one time at the dance, he didn't know how to dance and they asked him to dance with him and he gets real shy. He's like, hey, my dad just called. I messed up. I got to go home. I'm in trouble. And he never was, but it would get him out of a certain situation that people won't be like, oh, you're a coward, or Ernest is a big weenie. No, my dad, and that gave them the confidence to, when they're in their 20s and even further, that my dad will be here for me for no matter what. My daughter knows that if she is uncomfortable at some kind of party in college right now, she can call me or she can call her brother and we'll go pick her up nonchalantly.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to do raising them. So you always say, always have a consequences and a conscience. You know, hey, you can take that Labubu with you, but if it falls or you lose it, don't ask me for another one. And if they come home crying, the worst part is to cave in. But if you don't, and you say, didn't we talk about this? Yes. Whose fault is it? It's mine. Then they realize, you know what? Dad was cool. He let me take it. It's my fault. And I was held accountable. I love you. Give me a hug. Maybe if you're good for Christmas, you might get another one. But you got to give them that. And that goes from the gentle parenting to gentle parenting with accountability. Because at the end of the day, you want kids that are older, that aren't acting like 5-year-olds when they're 14 and 15. You want to give them a conscience, not like my dad. I swear to God, son, I'll whoop your ass if you come home drunk one day. You get scared.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, you want your children, this goes back to the gentle parenting, you want your kids to depend and ask for help. If anything, if your son goes through this time or your daughter goes through this time where they're gonna, and trust me, it is, especially with all the social media, where they get in these dark places and they have no one to turn to, and they do the extreme of trying to take pills as crying things or anything like that. Those are the times where you need to be that parent that they could call and talk to you, and you won't judge them. And that's one of the things that, when we did it this way and created a culture that, if there's anything from boys, my son like was bullied, you know, okay, let's figure this out, or I dad, I think my girlfriend wants to have sex with me, as a senior, you know what I mean? And I would rather him come and talk to me, even though there's a lot of information out there in the the internet, but you want to be that parent your kids can go and build a relationship with. And it's not necessarily your friend, it's someone they can, an adult figure that they can be their hero. I call it their hero. I don't want to be their friend. I want them to be the guy that if they need, I'm here for them. I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes any sense.
No, totally. How do you balance, being a hero but still being a human? I mean, I'm sure your kids have seen you kind of like fail and mess up and not be perfect, or maybe they haven't. Maybe you've never shown them that side. I mean,
No, you have to. You have to show. They've seen it a lot. They've seen, especially with this restaurant industry, they see me come home very disappointed with my old corporate job. They saw the stress, and I would talk to them. I'd be like, work's not doing good right now, son. Sometimes I would say no. I'm like, my kids would know if dad's not good or not, and they would. And you have to be open with them. If they want something like a Wii or Xbox 5 and you can't afford it, you got to be honest with them and be like, look, right now we don't have the money. And because that's all we could afford, but we called it camping and the kids loved it. You try to let them see a little bit, but not, you don't want them to not know, be obvious, because if they don't, then they're going to think of you as horrible parents because you didn't give them the gifts you wanted
yeah.
or anything like that.
Did
So,
did you ever deal with like, kind of was there jealousy maybe that other kids had stuff that they didn't?
yeah, all the time. My son would get frustrated. He's like, man, dad, I really wanted that. But he would understand that dad's still wearing the same clothes that he works, and he understands that. My son, and especially my daughter was the worst because we were really, broke at the time. But she understood. But, when you have a life where materialistic things aren't what makes them happy, and their friend might have an X5, but you don't even have an X5 at the house, they understand. But at the same time, when they get older, like my son, he was big into video games, and at the time I needed help with running a little business. I would give an incentive. Hey, help me out, I'll buy that game for you. And you're like, okay, let's do it. Deal. Hey, go cut the grass. And I used to make accounts, all right, you got $20 for this. And I'd hold the money for it, things like that. Because if you don't give them a reward, if you give them things just to give them things and not understand that, hey, if I work hard, I can get anything I want, then they're not going to appreciate anything they have when they do get it. So that's the one thing that even, and then when we had the restaurant too, they knew. I told them, I said, I'm not going to pay y'all because I can't afford it. We're opening this restaurant, but if everything becomes successful, y'all are investors, so y'all get cuts. And yeah, now my daughter lives in a really nice apartment and drives a BMW, and goes to culinary school that she doesn't have to pay for. My son gets whatever they want, but they understood the hard work it took to get to that.
Well, and do your kids, I mean, obviously they're old enough to kind of grasp that as adults. Do they what have they said to you about that? Have they said, hey, I realize now it was really hard as a kid, or have you kind of gotten that validation now that they're a little bit older, that work ethic that would
Yeah,
you?
well, okay, yeah, like I'm telling you, my son at a young age, you got to understand his generation and my daughter's generation, they don't have that work is this, that work value like we would do, Ali. You know what I mean? We would grind. And when they saw that with their father and they saw that working here, do you know how much they get paid? Because they're actually 20-year-olds in the workforce where you actually have people that want to work. My son's getting paid hellacious. My daughter, is working, at other restaurants, and she's getting paid a lot of money because why? She has those work values that a lot of these chefs don't see anymore. Back in the day, you would see a chef and you would, hey, you're gonna have to work a double, and they'd be like, yes, chef, and that was me. Now you do that, and they're like, are you kidding me? No, I got blah 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 blah, and my daughter's like, yes, chef, I'll work, and he's like, you get promoted really quickly. So my son at 25 bought his first house, by himself, and it's because he had the no mentality. He never said no. He knew what it took to get to that next level.
And your son did not follow you into barbecue, but your daughter is. What field did your son
Well,
get into?
well, my son works for a security firm, but my son tried. God bless him. Oh my gosh, we'd start him in the pit room and he wasn't good, so we moved him to the front and he didn't work out. We tried to put him, as to clean, and he didn't work out there. Cashier, he just didn't. He just didn't have it. And Ali, if you've been in the restaurant industry, you know that. There's some people that just don't get it or just can't, they just don't work out. And then you got people that you see them and they're natural. And I saw that in my daughter at the age of 7, and she was good. And by the time she was a sophomore in high school at the restaurant, she was telling people what to do. And she knew the standard. And now she left the culinary school. She hadn't worked here in about 2 years. So I asked her to help me out because we were understaffed like a month ago. And everybody's like, what happened to this girl? This girl is like a general on steroids, and it's because she went to the CIA, and she graduates in March, I think March, and they just taught her everything else that she already knew a lot, but now they just kind of polished her off, and she's a natural born leader. My children are natural born leaders because of what they saw their father do. At the end of the day, you mimic a lot of what your parents are,
Sure.
and
So,
and
I'm curious, though, what was that conversation like, or was it a series of conversations? It must have been pretty hard and painful to kind of come to that realization, hey, I love you, but this isn't the place for you because this is kind of this thing that you've been building, and part of your legacy and that you've worked so hard and it's your passion and your home, in terms of the restaurant and just barbecue in general. So what was that like? How did he come to terms with it and you together? Tell us about that.
well, it's just like anything else. It's like, okay, I'll give you an example. Uh, my dad was a phenomenal baseball player. Okay. He was a phenomenal football player. He has school records and everything. My uncles had school records. His dream was for his son to play really good baseball and football. I was not good. I was that fat kid on right field that wanted a snow cone and a chili dog. You know what I mean? So I could see it in his eyes. You know what I mean? And no matter how much I tried, I just couldn't get it. And my father said, it's okay. We'll figure out what you're good at. And I figured out what I was good at. And it was cooking. At that young age, my grandma had a restaurant, but that's another story. Same thing with my son. He's like, Dad, I just can't get it. I'm like, it's okay. This is not what your calling is. You're not a failure. You're not, I still love you. We're going to figure out what you're good at. And that's when he went to college and he figured out what he was really good at. So you know, the rest is history. Now he comes. I said, "You come and eat all you want." He was here this weekend, and he goes, "Man, I sucked at." And now we laugh about it. It's like, "God, I was horrible at that." And I'm like, "You were, but it's just it wasn't in you, and that's understandable." And he goes, "Dad, that always killed me that I couldn't be part of it." I'm like, "You're still part of it. This is yours. This will be yours, but you work on different things." And he has great ideas for other stuff, but just to be on the line and stuff, he knows he's not that good. But my daughter's a different story. She's a gangster. Like Jesus, like I even told my wife, I was like, she's better than me at that age. And the funny part is it skips generations, or it will be that generation. My 2 children, the most phenomenal athletes in the family. My dad was like, oh, it skipped a generation and went to my children, and my dad loved it. Um, you don't make your children feel like failures, and you don't make them feel like they're disappointments. What you have to do as a parent is find out what they're good at and encourage it, plant it, and let it grow. If your kid is not an athlete, figure out what he's good at. See what he likes. Because growing up, and I think Ollie's more, no, you're too young. Education, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to get a good job, and you're going to get 401k, and you're going to retire after 40 years with one job. That was it. That was it. You could not have dreams and aspirations of being a chef. You could not have all this other stuff because that's what you are. Because education is very powerful for people that are immigrants, for people that have Hispanic backgrounds. That our grandparents were not. We were not allowed to talk in Spanish at the house, and the reason why is because if we had an accent, people look at you differently. And we had to sound American as much as possible. Now it's okay, and that's the difference. And remember that word. It's okay. Remember that. Dad, I couldn't do it. It's okay. It's okay.
What do you hope the next generation of pitmasters and fans and even your own kids take from your story? And just to kind of, it's so funny. I know your story so well, but the truth is, you spent a lot of years grinding and working before you were really at a place where you could try and reach for the stars, and you really have, from winning all the barbecue competitions to opening up Burnt Bean to now being the #1 barbecue restaurant. really in the world. I'm always happy to say that. That's just how prolific that list is and the talent on that list. But yeah, like knowing that essentially you're sitting on top of the mountain at midlife. What do you want, the fans and your kids to take away from all that?
My kids saw the struggle. My kids saw that I didn't get any freebies. My kids saw everything from ground one and saw how beautiful this thing became. And what they saw, the most common denominator out of all this stuff was you have to work for your goals. You have to work hard. You are going to have more disappointments than victories. And my kids have seen that. They've seen me come home in tears and saying, God, I just don't understand how I didn't, win it, or I just don't know how it happened like that. They understand that at the end of the day, there's more disappointments than victories. But as long as you work hard, anything is possible. And they've seen it. And as a parent, that's all you want, is to understand that you're leaving a legacy of whatever you do. But I tell people the only two things I ever had to work hard for, the two things I worked my ass off for, the two titles that I am going to go to my grave are, it's not pitmaster, it's not grill master, it's dad and chef. They're the only two that I worked hard for. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to leave a legacy for my kids, but I want them to say I was a good dad. Strict, but he was a good dad, and I could always be, I was always there for them, and that's all I ever wanted. I just wanted my kids to be proud, because I always say if your kids become successful, then your life is complete. I can have 1,500 restaurants and be the richest guy in the world, and if I don't have any relationship with my kids, what's it for then?
You hear that, Elon Musk?
You're not taking any of that food. You're not taking anything with you when you die. What's going to be on your headstone? At the end of the day, you don't want your kids, especially your kids, to forget who you are. I want them to tell stories to my great grandkids or great great grandkids and say, your grandfather was the best ever. And tell them stories about me. I just don't want to be forgotten. And that nice car, the $10,000 that your kids borrow, the tons of building that you own, no one's going to remember that. It's going to be sold. At the end of the day, the only two things I wanted in life was to be a chef and to be a dad. And I've accomplished both. And all the other stuff that you did with the introduction of all those beautiful accolades, those are cool. But at the end of the day, just like the title of this place is the world's greatest dad. That's all we want, right? That's all we want.
That was actually the way Neil and I came about this was, the backstory is Neil was he was an executive at Food Network, and obviously I'd done a few shows and we had met working on a project, and the project didn't go forward, but we kept in touch and we were like, hey, let's try and figure out something. So we were literally like, brainstorming ideas, because that's what you do, like, and it becomes like, okay, it's got to be a food competition show, and what's been done, what hasn't been done, is this feasible, will this play out? And then all of a sudden we just were like talking about our kids at these respected ages, and it came upon us that was like, well, this is actually very substantive. We're sitting here trying to come up with some underwater cooking competition when it's like, maybe there's something in just talking about what, quote, really matters and what kind of sustains us. And just so you know, Ernest, we just had a meeting and we were like, we've accomplished a lot, but we have so much more to go to even hit basic mile markers. But there are moments where we're like, oh my God, if I just posted this one thing, if I share this article of you teary-eyed talking about what matters to you, that's like actually meaningful in life. So, that's where we're coming from.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I did want to ask you this before we move into our lightning round. Oh, I literally look at you, and it is funny because it's so convenient in life when we can just kind of start talking about any point of our lives with a lot of successes, right? But I would say, well, Ernest, whatever you did, apparently it's worked out. It was a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. But if there was one thing you could tell your younger self many, many moons ago, what do you think it would be? Knowing knowing what you know now?
The only thing a lot of people I always say that, or you see people post something like that. The only thing I would tell myself is don't stop. And because there was a lot of times where I wanted to give up. Don't stop because the view is very beautiful on that mountain that you just climbed. Don't stop. You're right there. There was a lot of times where you had to dig in deep, and I would tell them, don't stop. It's beautiful. The view on this mountain is beautiful. All those sacrifices, all the no's and all the better luck next times and all that, it's worth it. It's worth all the shit. Actually, we talked about this with my family right now, where my parents are like, God, look where you started and now where you're at. And you never gave up, and I didn't give up. And all you have to do is open up your wallet and see your kids, and you'll accomplish anything. I tell that to my wife all the time. They always say, "What drives you?" When I work 20 hours and I get here at 1:30 in the morning, it's a little bit different now because we're successful. But at the beginning, what drove me is I see my two kids in my wallet, and it's one of those. I was going to get my wallet, and it's a little picture, and I think my son's 10, and my daughter's 3, and my wife and I are real young, and that picture, we've had a lot of family portraits after that one, but that one meant more meaningful because we had nothing except each other. And just like that song, that says home is wherever I'm with you. You know what I mean? And that's the one thing that I would tell myself is that don't give up. Like, don't fucking give up, dude. You know what I mean? But there's one thing that a lot of people, and I'm surprised, it's not necessarily that we're surprised because we're talking about being a dad, but the one thing that dads go through every day that we need to really bring out and talk about more is dad's mental health. Like, straight up. Like, dad is the superhero. Dad takes on all the bullets. You've seen so many pictures of dads covering up with arrows while their kids are okay. Get yourself a community like what I do. And I have a couple of barbecue guys. And at first, they thought it was kind of weird calling them, but call them and say, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And then, at first they'd be like, "Yeah, I'm okay." Well, this is kind of weird. I'm like, "No, how's your mental health?" Because no one thinks about dad. Everybody thinks about little girls, little boys, and the wife. No one thinks of dad. No one thinks of dad how he's stressed about how we're going to pay bills. No one thinks about dad about how we're feeling. No one talks about dad of you try to talk to your wife about it and she kind of looks at you weird. Sometimes you need that network of guys that just gets it. And that's the one thing I'm trying to do with my barbecue friends and two other guys is the mental health, because if we don't take care of our mental health, strokes, heart attacks, and suicide, pop up. Because a lot of the times us fathers, like you were asking questions about, being a good dad and being what were you saying, the genuine culture or whatever, is because you think that if you're not being a good dad, you're a failure. And that's the worst feeling in the world as a father, is that you have no one to vent and someone to tell you you are a good father. You are doing a good job. Because how do you feel when your kids say, "Thanks, Dad," and they're being genuine, not because you gave them a snow cone or something, but when they're like, "Thanks, Dad," it feels good. But sometimes we don't hear it enough. And sometimes we need to work on our mental health. And that's one thing that you two guys have a lot of power with this podcast to talk about, that someone can relate to when they're hearing this, is about it's okay. Like the word I was telling you before, mental health of fathers need to be brought out more and discussed more, because we hold a lot of shit in. Because back in the day, if you had to be tough, and if you kind of vented, you were weak. And no, it's not fair. We need to be okay too. That's why you see dads, if you see the stigmata of dads on TV shows and everything, from Al Bundy to all those other guys, how they look on TV: miserable, tired, trying to make this place, and the wife's fine and kids are fine, but how does dad look? I think there'd be a less alcoholic dads if they didn't have someone they can just talk about.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to that. Ernest, this has been awesome. And I think, it's so funny, like the mental health stuff. It's like we could just spawn it into a whole other episode, and we
You
definitely want to have you back. But I
come
think
back next year and we can talk mental health.
I couldn't hear you. You broke up. What'd you say?
I said, will you come back next year? We could do a mental health. Yep, cool.
Yeah, but before that whole year comes around, find three guys that you're good friends with, like y'all two, and just talk about life other than that. Talk about mental health. How's life? How are you doing? Just say that. How are you
Yeah,
doing? If they need someone to vent because of their stress in life, and if you can have friends like that you can vent to and they don't judge you, that's something
yeah.
special.
Actually, that's kind of the core of even how Neil and I approach like why we, are putting in the time to build this thing, right? Is because it actually is quite therapeutic. I feel like as you get older and you have your own families, you have less time to just be like with friends and stuff like that. And that's a mistake. That's, look, that's the one commodity that I think to me is far more important than money, although money's an issue, but it's time.
Money is always an issue.
Money's always big, but that time is serious, and you do have to make that time. Yeah, no, I think it would be really awesome to kind of dive into mental health, a mental health one just right there. But I do want to jump into lightning round. Neil, we ready for that one?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right. So shake it off. We're gonna get into something fun, and this is the dad lightning round. All right, Ernest Servantes, are you ready for the
Let's
dad
do it.
lightning round? You're
Let's
ready,
do it.
ready. All right, yes, chef. Here we go. Number one, would you rather have super strength or invincibility?
Invincibility.
You'd rather take the punches and throw them. I like that. Number two, parenting advice in 5 words or less.
Just go with the flow.
I love that. Coffee or Red Bull?
Mushroom coffee. I hate coffee and I hate Red Bulls, but I've been like this thing called Rise.
Huh?
Oh, it's the
Yeah.
best. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that you got this whole health element too. There's so much more to this guy, I'm telling you, Neil. One book every dad should read.
Man, they're all barbecue books.
That's fine.
Anthony Bourdain's. I like Anthony Bourdain's, and then I like Franklin's. Those
Yeah.
two books are pretty solid.
I assume Kitchen Confidential.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great one. Dream dinner guest, dead or alive.
Oh, dream dinner guest is Francis Mallman, hands down.
All right. Of course, the live fire fine dining chef for the barbecue champ. Greatest dad of all time.
Greatest dad of all time. I would say like any dad that was in World War II, especially in the
Mm.
Hispanic culture or minorities, because not only did they have to be a dad, but they had to go through segregation and all that stuff that none of us ever had to even witness, and for them to do what they did and raise the children that became us, I gotta give them respect, man.
One ingredient you can't live without.
Man, an ingredient, man, pepper, but I would say hot sauce. I love hot sauce on everything.
Just
So,
like bottled hot sauce or
man,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
bottled hot sauce, and I have I
Okay.
have a plethora of them. Depends on what I
Okay.
have.
Okay. Favorite thing to cook for your family?
My favorite thing to cook for my family loves like steaks. They're very simple, but yeah, steak or it used to be barbecue, but now they're barbecued out. So
Yeah.
yeah, so steaks, lamb.
Okay. And I know you make a mean lamb. Best music to listen to while cooking.
Gypsy Kings, hands down.
That was a fast one. I like it.
Yeah,
And finally, Ernest Cervantes. Best part about being a dad.
when they say hi, Dad,
Just
that's the best
that.
part. Yeah, especially well when you're when you're a little kid, they're like hi, Dad, and they would hold your hands. But when they get older, when they still call you Dad, is the best. You got 20-year-olds that they could call you like some called Ernest or whatever. My kids still call me Dad. And it's the best feeling in the world. It's like, hey, Dad, and they give you a big hug. It's because I do it to my dad. My dad gets sentimental still, and I call my dad Pops.
Yeah.
The other day he was down here for Thanksgiving, and I give him a big hug and I said, hey, Pops, and he gets emotional because it's just you will always never get tired of hearing it. It's the best saying in the world. Hey, Dad, it's the best feeling in the world. You never take advantage of it.
I will say my kids are 7 and 5 as I mentioned, and so I'm in the transitional phase from daddy, and
That's the best
Yeah.
ones.
so I'm daddy, and then it's becoming dad more. No, sometimes now
Yeah.
they'll say dad, and I'm like dad. Well, that's
Yeah.
where we're headed.
Yeah, that is a thing, but it
Ah,
still carries
that's
it.
great. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna anoint you now. Are you ready? Ernest Cervantes, you are the world's greatest dad.
Yes.
We should have given you like one of those big barbecue championship trophies. I feel
Right.
like just the announcement's not enough. But
Thank
yeah,
you for
man.
being here. Thank you for doing it. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no problem. I had a lot of fun doing it, and sorry I didn't get back with y'all yesterday. Just we've been so busy, so I was really looking forward to this thing. Yeah, like I had like 5 alarms for this thing. My wife reminded me because I really want to be part of it.
Good.
So
Yeah.
Thank you for being
No,
here.
we'd love to have you seriously back on because I think that there was a lot of like
More
I have
friends
to say,
covered.
admittedly too, like usually we can start to go a little bit extra and extra extra, but I have to run over to KXAN. We're shooting more of those food show things, so I got to finish the script and get out of here.
He's a busy
So
guy. All right. Well, thank you, and
yeah,
we'll
no
see you
problem.
when we drop the app, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, all right.